I'm back with another plugin review, and this is another good one. The plugin is called NovoNotes 3DX from a company called NovoLabs. And it promises to be a very comprehensive 3D penner and binaural rendering plugin. So let's check it out. But first of all, hello everybody. In case you're new here, my name is Michael Wagner. I teach at the Antoinette Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And on this channel, I talk about digital media, game design, and spatial audio. And if any of those topics interest you, I invite you to subscribe or join my Discord community. Invite link is in the description below. And since you're already at it, also please don't forget to press the like button, especially if you get any value out of my videos, because it really helps out the channel and it makes my videos more visible to other people. Before I continue, I need to point out that I do not take sponsorship for my channel. Everything that I'm going to say is strictly my own opinion. The plugins that I review are plugins that I actually purchased myself, and today is no exception. So this is actually a plugin that I bought with my own money. I was first made aware of this plugin by a comment made on one of my videos, and I then decided to check it out, and I actually liked it, so I decided to purchase it. Now, the plugin comes in two different versions, a light version and a standard version. The one that we are going to use today is the standard version. The main difference being is that the light version is stereo only, whereas the standard version is actually capable of handling all kinds of surround sound formats. So if you are working with immersive audio, this standard version might be the one that is more appealing to you. What the plugin really does is it allows you to pan sound in three-dimensional space, and it allows you to do that for all kinds of surround sound formats, at least if you're using the standard version. It also includes a binaural processing algorithm, so if you're interested in creating binaural audio, this is also an option. It's actually a really nice binaural processing algorithm. The company claims that this algorithm is award-winning, and I do believe that because it's actually a really nice one, and it sounds really, really good. Now, the price of this plugin is not exactly cheap, so the standard version that we're going to use today comes in at $348. This might sound a bit much, but if you are in immersive audio production, you know that these plugins can be very pricey, and given for what it actually is capable of doing, I think this is a reasonable price. I personally purchased it during the intro sale, so it was a little bit cheaper than that. So you might want to wait for a sale and pick it up during that sale. You can also buy the light version and then upgrade to the standard version later. But once again, the light version is only stereo, so there's some limitations on what you can do with it. Most likely, you will be interested in the standard version, which is capable of handling all kinds of surround formats. They do offer a demo version, and I highly recommend trying that out first of all, because it is fairly expensive, and then there are also a couple of issues that I found, and I'm going to talk about them towards the end of this video. And these issues might be a problem for you depending on what surround sound format you're working with and what your actual workflow is and what you would need that plugin for. So highly recommend trying it out first. I put a link to their webpage in the description below. Check it out and see if it works for you. And if it works for you, please leave a comment in the comment section. I would be really interested to learn if you are equally excited about this plugin as I am. So let's see what this plugin can do. And I'm going to work with Nuendo today. Now, the reason I'm going to use Nuendo is primarily because I want to have a track with a very high channel count, and Cubase doesn't really do that. So I'm going to use Nuendo today. But the plugin really works with any digital audio workstation. Obviously, if you have a digital audio workstation that is capable of working with immersive audio, you get more value out of it. If you're using it on a DAW that is only stereo, you can still do the binaural rendering, but you won't be able to do any, 3D processing, any conversion of surround sound formats. So I'm going to work with Nuendo. I'm going to work on a Mac, which also is not an issue. It works on Windows and Macs the same way. The only limitation that I'm aware of is that the Pro Tools version only exists for Mac. So if you're on Pro Tools and if you're on Windows, you're a little bit out of luck. But my feeling is that most Pro Tools users are on Macs anyway. So let's have a listen on what I have here. Once again, a very simple project that I'm starting with. And this time what I did is I took two loops that come with either Nuendo or Cubase, I'm not completely sure, and they're going to be the basis of what we're going to work with. Let's just have a brief listen of on how that sounds. So they're essentially two cinematic loops. And that's really everything that we're going to use today. And I'm going to use this plugin to essentially kind of move that sound around in three-dimensional space and play around with it a little and do some binaural rendering as well. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a track that is capable of handling immersive audio. So let's add a group track and let's move these two loops into that group track. So let's add a group track. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first add a 7.1.4. It doesn't really make any difference which one you use. The plugin is capable of handling any surround sound format that you throw at it. But I'm going to use this 7.1.4 here. So let's call that helper. And let's add the track. And let's just move the two loops that I have into that helper track so that we have that sound going through the group track. Oops, sorry. Here we are. And let's see if we still hear something. Yes, we do. So the helper track is now a 7.1.4 track, and it can obviously hold any plugin up to 7.1.4. So let's open up the channel settings and let's add an instance of 3DX. So let's search for 3DX and let's add that here. And it comes up with the standard settings. So let me close the channel settings here. And so it identifies itself as on a 7.1.4 bus. And depending on what type of bus you're using or what type of track you're using and what channel layout the track has, it will come up with different standard settings. In this particular case, it came up as something that expects a mono signal and it's converting it into binaural. So if you're playing that now, we are not really going to hear anything that is particularly interesting. We are just going to hear mono signal that is converted into binaural. Now here's where the magic happens, because we can actually tell that plugin to not only expect a mono signal, we can tell it to expect any surround sound signal that fits into a 7.1.4 channel layout. So anything that really is up to 12 channels. So since we have a 7.1.4, let's tell it to expect a 7.1.4 signal. So let's go back into the plugin and we have this drop-down menu here, and let's click on the drop-down menu, and that will then essentially give us all the options that we have. And as you can see, there are quite a few. Essentially anything, once again, that fits into 12 channels is listed here. And what we want is we want a 7.1.4 channel layout, and as soon as we do that, we get the channel layout of all the 12 channels. And the plugin now allows us to move these around, so we can move them around in three-dimensional space, up, down, left, right. We can also to rotate them, and in order to get to the rotation, we can essentially open up the advanced section here. So let's do that. And then it allows us to rotate the speaker layout in all kinds of directions. We can also scale it. And that gives us a lot of options. So let's see how that actually sounds. So let's maybe, just leave it like that and let's just play our sound. So once again, we can move the sound around with all 12 speakers, up, down. We can turn it around. We can change the size. And we can also change the position with the sliders here. So let's move that in that direction or in the other direction. And that gives us a lot of options. Now, but there's actually more, because at the moment what I'm doing is I'm converting the 7.1.4 signal into a binaural signal. Which by itself is interesting, especially since this is actually a very good binaural rendering algorithm. But the plugin also allows me to convert that audio format into any other surround sound format. So if I'm going back into the plugin and I'm looking at the output section here, I can essentially change what output I want to have in the very same way. And I'm getting the same options that I have. So for example, what I can do is I can convert that into a 7.1 file or format. I can convert it into 7.1.2. For example, I want to do something with Dolby Atmos as a Dolby Atmos bed. I can convert it into ambisonics if I want to, or any of the other immersive audio formats. Or I can also leave it at 7.1.4. And what that will essentially do is it will essentially use the plugin as a panner in a three-dimensional space that is strictly 7.1.4. Now, as soon as I have a multi-channel layout that I'm converting to that, I'm getting these additional options that allow me to change the localization of the individual speakers. So the idea is that if you're positioning a sound object in three-dimensional space, if you're positioning kind of 10 different speakers in three-dimensional space, you want to have some control over how accurate the localization of those speakers actually is, or if it's something that is more smeared across the entire spectrum. Depending on the application, you might want to do one or the other. And the plugin allows you to really change that between kind of fully localized and kind of completely smooth. And I would recommend just playing around with these algorithms or playing around with these settings and then essentially decide what works for your particular project. We also have the possibility to change the distance attenuation. That essentially is the idea that the further a sound source is away, essentially the more you have a high frequency roll off, and that's just because of basic physics. And you can play around with those things and kind of change them according to your needs and to your whatever sounds good to you. But we don't have to stop at 7.1.4. We can actually go higher than that. So let's see how far we can go. And in order to do that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a group track in Nuendo that has the highest channel count that Nuendo can handle. So let's go back into Nuendo. And I'm going to add a group track here. And let's add the highest channel count that we can get. So under more, essentially we can select 22.2. I believe that is a standard that comes with the Japanese 8K format. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. But that is sort of the highest channel count that Nuendo can handle. So let's add a track here and let's call it helper 2. Now I'm not going to connect it to anything. I'm just going to use it in order to demonstrate how far 3DX is actually able to go. And let's open up the channel configuration and let's add an instance of 3DX here. And as soon as I do that, here I have it. Once again, it starts up with a standard configuration of mono input and binaural output. But what we can do is if we click on the drop-down here, we all now have all these different options. And they don't even fit on the screen here. But I can essentially tell it that I now have a 22.2. I even could do third order ambisonics if I wanted to, but I can tell it that I have a 22.2 channel format, and then I see my 24 channels here, and I can convert that into anything else. So let's say, for example, in third order ambisonics if I wanted to, or any other format. And obviously, we can also choose an ambisonics format as an input. That would be something that we would obviously put on an ambisonics track. But let's just say we do that, and if I do that, I essentially get this sphere that represents the ambisonics sound sphere that you can see here, and I can convert that into anything else as I want. So, for example, I want to convert it into 22.2 channel format, and that's something I can do as well. And then I have all the options. I can move the sound around, I can rotate it, I can change the position, and everything else. Now, this is fairly unique. I am not aware of any other plugin that is capable of converting pretty much any surround sound format into any other surround sound format. And if you're working in surround sound or immersive audio, you're aware that if you have very special needs, so for example, if you want to convert an Aura format into an ambisonics format, there are usually special plugins that you need to purchase, and these plugins can be extremely expensive. And finding a plugin that sort of has everything included is surprising, and at the same time actually really great, and I really like that. It has become one of my standard go-to plugins for any conversion. Now, obviously, you could do most of these conversions also, for example, within Nuendo, but Nuendo itself, the internal conversion isn't really that good. So having a plugin like that really kind of does something that actually also sounds good is really, really beneficial. Now, it is fairly obvious that I like that plugin. However, there are a couple of issues that I need to talk about. And the first issue is that, unfortunately, some of the conversions didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. So, for example, when I tried to convert 22.2 channel format into something else, it didn't do exactly what I expected it to do. The sound was not exactly where it was supposed to be. Now, that could be because of the way Nuendo handles these multi-channel tracks. That is a very well-known problem with Nuendo, that it tends to be a bit picky when it comes to the channel configurations. I'm not completely sure, but it's something to be aware of. So if you are interested in the plugin, once again, please download a demo. It is an expensive plugin, and you want to make sure that it actually works for your workflow. Now, my second issue isn't as much an issue as it is a feature that I think is missing, and that is that the plugin does not self-identify as a panner within Nuendo or Cubase. So if you right-click on a panner in a track and you want to change the channel panner, you don't have it as an option here. And it would be really nice to have that option to simply use 3DX as a panner in Nuendo or Cubase. It would make things a lot easier, but unfortunately that's not what it does. So if the developers are watching this video, I feature request. It would be really nice to add that. The third issue that I found, at least on my setup, was that the user interface tends to be a little bit sluggish to the point that it sometimes even freezes, at least for a couple of seconds. Now, the audio is always fine. It's just the user interface that becomes unresponsive. And then I needed to wait a couple of seconds until everything came back and then could make changes again. So if you're interested in that plugin, I definitely recommend trying it out first to see if there's any issues that I find or if it actually works for your workflow. Now, once again, the functionality was not affected, but it was nevertheless annoying to kind of try to change certain things and then it would sort of freeze. And sometimes you would even get the beach ball. And then I had to wait a couple of seconds until it kind of came back and then everything was fine again. But this is really everything I wanted to say today. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, please use the comment section below or join my Discord community. Invert link in the description below. And with that being said, see you at the next video.